Before there was Satan. Before there was evil. Before there was a name for the darkness. There was an angel, and he was the most beautiful thing God ever made. This is not a story about a monster. This is a story about the moment before the fall, the last second of perfection, the instant when the most glorious being in existence looked at God and thought, "I should be sitting where you are." In 1847, a 24-year-old French painter named Alexandre Cabanel submitted a painting to the most prestigious art institution in the world, the Paris Salon, the gatekeepers of everything that was considered worthy, serious, and acceptable in Western art. They rejected it. Not because it was badly painted, it was technically flawless. They rejected it because of what it showed. Because Cabanel had painted Lucifer, and he had painted him too well, too beautiful, too human, too close to something the church did not want people to feel when they looked at the devil. Sympathy. What is it about this painting that makes it so dangerous 500 years after the story it tells was first written down? And who was Lucifer, really? Before religion turned him into a symbol, before Hollywood turned him into a costume, before the world decided it was safer to make him a monster than to admit what he actually was. Today, we go back to the beginning, before the fall, before the fire, before the name. This is the story of the most beautiful catastrophe in history. Alexandre Cabanel was born in Montpellier, France, in 1823. He was not a rebel. He was not a troublemaker. He was, by all accounts, a quiet and extraordinarily gifted young man who had been admitted to the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris at the age of 17, one of the most competitive art schools in the world. He was trained in the grand tradition of French academic painting. Perfect anatomy, perfect composition, flawless technique, the kind of painting that looked less like paint on canvas and more like a window into another world. By his early 20s, he had already won prizes. He was considered one of the most promising painters of his generation. And then he painted Lucifer. He was 24 years old. The painting shows a single figure, a young man, if you can call him that, lying on his back in the void between heaven and earth. His body is perfect, impossibly perfect. The musculature of a Greek god, the face of someone who has just been told the worst news in the history of existence. His hands are pressed against his face, not in rage, not in defiance, in grief. His wings, enormous, dark at the tips, still partly luminous, spread beneath him like something halfway between an embrace and a collapse. He is falling, or he has just fallen. The moment is ambiguous, and that ambiguity is the entire point. He is not a monster. He is not triumphant. He is not even angry. Not yet. He is heartbroken. And that, according to the Paris Salon of 1847, was the problem. To understand why this painting was rejected, you have to understand what the church and the culture it had shaped for 15 centuries needed Lucifer to be. They needed him to be ugly. They needed him to be the thing you recoil from, the thing that is obviously wrong, the threat you can identify from a distance, point at, and name. Because if the devil is beautiful, if he looks like grief instead of malice, like a fallen prince instead of a crawling beast, then the story becomes complicated. If he looks like someone you might feel sorry for, the question becomes unavoidable. What exactly did he do that was so wrong? And that question leads somewhere the church had never wanted to go. Let's go to the beginning, not the beginning of the world. Before that. In the oldest traditions, in the Hebrew texts, in the apocryphal writings, in the mystical literature that predates the versions most people know, there was a moment before creation when God made the angels. And among the angels, one was different. His name, in the original Hebrew, was Hillel ben Shachar, the son of the morning, the shining one, the bearer of light. We know him today by his Latin name, Lucifer. He was not made like the other angels. He was made to be the closest thing to God that God had ever created, the most intelligent, the most radiant, the most capable of understanding the divine mind. In the book of Ezekiel, God himself speaks of this being in terms that are almost overwhelming in their extravagance. You were the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. You were the anointed cherub who covers, and I placed you there. You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created. He was not just an angel, he was the angel, the first among equals who was not equal to any of them. And then something happened. The texts disagree about exactly what it was. Some say it was pride, that Lucifer looked at his own reflection in the divine light and decided that something that perfect deserved to be at the top. Some say it was a specific moment, the creation of humanity, that God announced to the angels that this new creature, this being made of clay and breath, was to be cherished above all others, that the angels were to bow before Adam. And Lucifer refused, not out of cruelty, not out of evil, out of a logic that, if you follow it carefully, is almost impossible to argue with. He said, I was made of fire and light. I was made perfect. I was made first. And now you want me to bow before something made of mud? It was not a small question. It was the question that every being who has ever felt overlooked, undervalued, or replaced has asked in one form or another. Why should what I am count for less than what they are? The difference between Lucifer and everyone else who has ever asked that question is that Lucifer asked it to God's face. What followed is described in fragments across dozens of texts, in Isaiah, in Revelation, in the book of Enoch, in Paradise Lost, in traditions so old they predate the written word. There was a war in heaven. Not a metaphor, a war. Lucifer took a third of the angels with him. A third. Think about what that means. The most compelling, most persuasive, most brilliant being in existence made an argument so powerful that 1 in 3 of God's created servants chose to follow him rather than stay. The battle was fought across the foundations of creation, and Lucifer lost, not because his argument was wrong necessarily, but because in a universe with a God, the argument doesn't matter as much as the decision. He was cast out, thrown down, expelled from the presence of the divine, which, for a being who had been made to live in that presence, was not just a punishment. It was an annihilation. He lost his name. Hillel ben Shachar, the Shining One, the Son of the Morning, ceased to exist. What fell from heaven was something new, something the universe had never seen before. A being of infinite intelligence and infinite capacity for beauty, who had been permanently severed from the source of all beauty. God gave him a new name: the adversary, the accuser, the one who opposes. In Hebrew, Ha-Satan. Now look at Cabanel's painting again. The figure lying in the void, wings spread, hands over his face, body still luminous, still perfect, still carrying the memory of what he was, but falling. Already falling. He is painted in the exact moment between the name Hillel and the name Satan. The last second of the Shining One, the first second of everything that comes after. Cabanel understood something that the church did not want painted on a canvas in the middle of Paris in 1847, that the most terrifying thing about Lucifer is not what he became. It is what he was, because what he was not so different from us. A being of extraordinary capacity, convinced of his own worth, unable to accept a hierarchy he didn't choose, and willing to burn everything down rather than submit. The painting was eventually exhibited. It went on to be recognized as one of the masterworks of French academic painting. Cabanel himself became one of the most celebrated artists of the 19th century. But the first time the judges of the Paris Salon looked at that fallen angel lying in the void, They knew exactly what they were seeing. And they were right to be afraid of it, because the gap between Lucifer and humanity is not as wide as we have been taught. We have been taught that the devil is the opposite of everything good, the enemy of everything sacred. But the oldest stories say something more uncomfortable. They say he was the first being who looked at what God made, including himself, and decided it wasn't enough, that something was missing, that the order of things needed to be questioned. That is not the story of a monster. That is the story of consciousness itself. And Cabanel, at 24 years old, with nothing but paint and a canvas, and a mind that understood what the oldest myths were really about, looked at that story and said, "I know exactly what his face looks like." He was right. And we have never stopped being afraid of what he showed us. If this changed the way you think about a story you thought you already knew, share it with someone who thinks they know it too. And if you want to go deeper into the figures, the myths, and the masterpieces that contain the truths we were never supposed to find, subscribe. The story is just getting started.